Hey guys, Mr. Sisler here with your daily ed puzzle. So today we're going to be continuing to look at India, ancient India, and some cultural information about it. Um, Pardon the angle here, as you look like straight up my nose, but I could not sit any longer. It feels like somebody is like pile driving something into my back, so I had to stand up. Um, so again, last time we kind of laid the foundation for uh, early ancient India, um, and how the people got there. So remember that these people known as the Aryans were living in kind of what is modern day Central, Eastern Europe, maybe West Asia. And eventually they migrated south through the Himalayan mountains and into what is present day India. And they spread their culture there, and the culture mixed with the people who had already lived there. And out of that, we end up with a caste system, which is based on uh, the idea that if you are born into a certain position and your family members have certain jobs and you have a certain job, you're kind of stuck there. There's not much room for movement. So if you're born a priest, or excuse me, if you're born to priests, you're probably going to become a priest yourself. If you're born to what would be considered the lowest level of the caste, which would be like the street cleaners and the sewage cleaners, you're probably stuck there. Um, that gets less rigid over time, and there's more room for movement over time, but this really dominates Indian society. So if we look at our gods and sacred texts, remember at this time there are several major religions. So there's the what we call the Abrahamic religions, which are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which all stem from the original patriarch, so to speak, Abraham. Um, but then there's also, in this case, a religion called Hinduism that grows out of this mixing of the Aryan people and the people who were originally in India. Um, to this day, Hinduism, as the book says, is the world's third largest religion, and it's uh, a polytheistic religion, right? So it has they people who practice Hinduism believe in more than in many gods. Um, and uh, their sort of holy book are um, the Vedas, right? And the Vedas are like these epic poems that tell the story of Rama, who is the perfect king. Um, other and then the other holy book or holy story is called the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of the Lord. And in this poem, Krishna uh, praises duty. So the idea of duty and doing um, what you're asked and knowing your place in society is very big in Hinduism. But he also praises action over inaction, knowledge over ignorance, belief over disbelief, and good over evil. And as the book says, this is still a very popular um, kind of spiritual source, right? Among the beliefs in Hinduism are reincarnation, karma, and yoga, which are those three highlighted words there. Reincarnation is the idea that every human, actually every being, has a soul, right? And that the soul is eternal. The body dies, but the soul is never ending. And the idea with reincarnation is that based on how you live your life in the flesh, whether you're a human or an animal, you'll be reborn accordingly as a different being. So if you're a human and you live a greedy, lustful, uh, like deviant life, the belief is that you'll come back after you die as kind of something very low on the proverbial totem pole, like maybe like as a bug, um, or something like that. Whereas if you live a good life, you will come back as a higher being, right? As and you'll be rewarded in your next life. That kind of plays into the idea of karma, which is kind of a way of saying that what goes around comes around, right? Like we hear about karma in our everyday lives. People use that term a lot, but it has its foundation in this ancient religion. Um, and again, it's the idea that the way that you live your life and the way that you treat people is going to come around in the next life, and catch up with you essentially. So if you live a good life, if you treat people well, then in your next life, people will treat you well. If you treat people like dirt, then you're going to get treated like dirt. Um, and the ultimate goal of Hinduism is to break this cycle of reincarnation and karma, um, to where you reach kind of a near perfect state, a closer to perfect state. Um, and there are a lot of ways to reach this state of life. One of the ways is yoga. So again, yoga is something that's very present in Western life. People go to yoga class. They watch yoga videos. Celebrities have like different yoga programs. But again, we kind of have more of a we kind of use it more as like exercise or as even like a status symbol, I would say. But it's born more out of this quest for enlightenment, this quest to um, kind of learn how to control your body and to control your breathing, so that you can move towards a higher state of consciousness, where the material things in life don't matter, and where you can reach this kind of peaceful, um, almost perfect state. Okay, so again, these are the some excerpts from the sacred texts of Hinduism. Um, this one in particular is from the Bhagavad Gita, which is again a very very long poem that talks about kind of the most important parts of Hinduism, right? Um, and so we won't go through all of this. Here's another passage from the one of the epic poems, and here's another. Here's one from the Rig Veda, which is a series of hymns. Um, the big takeaway here is that uh, the Hindu holy books are typically these longer poems that tell a story with lessons in them about how to live your life. And they typically have to do with, knowing your place in society, doing your duty, um, and trying to, through your actions, attain that perfect life. Okay, so now we come to our final page of this section, which is about Siddhartha and Buddhism. So again, Buddhism is something that's very present in our lives. A lot of stories and movies take ideas from Buddhism. One example would be like Star Wars. The idea of the Force and Jedi's is very much um, related to Buddhism. If you're a sports fan, Phil Jackson, who coached the '90s Bulls with Michael Jordan and then coached Kobe and Shaq in LA, uses a lot of ideas around Buddhism and mindfulness in his coaching and in his everyday life. More and more, we see, companies like Google or Facebook, and smaller businesses too, um, encouraging people to practice mindfulness, so to sort of relieve stress, um, to get in touch with themselves. But again, that's all based on um, an older, more ancient version of that. And so, um, this is Buddhism began in India. Um, it's based on the teachings of this a person named Siddhartha Gautama. And according to tradition, he was born in 563 BC, and he lived in what's now Nepal. Um, and essentially, he grows up a prince, a very wealthy prince, but realizes that he's not satisfied. Right? Uh, he comes upon a sick and an old man and a dead man and a holy man who was poor but very happy. The story goes, and this made him reflect on what it means to be happy and what can bring happiness. And so he decides to um, give up all of his material wealth. He gives up his wife, he gives up his child, and he goes on this journey to search kind of for the answer to his question, like how can I be happy? How can I get rid of suffering? And he goes to a tree. He ends up finding a tree and meditates, um, and figures out how to be free from suffering. And he and that sort of those guidelines of how to be free from suffering are the basis and the foundation of Buddhism. So he teaches these things and he teaches these guidelines called the Four Noble Truths. Um, the first truth teaches us that all life is suffering, right? Like there's no way to live life without some suffering. The second truth is that suffering is caused by desire, right? So our human nature of wanting things and of thinking that we need things that we don't really need um, leads to this suffering. The third truth tells us that when we're able to end this desire and give up our material wants, we can end suffering, and that following the Eightfold Path, as it's called, can end suffering. The Eightfold Path is also called the Middle Way, and it's called the Middle Way because it promotes this idea of finding balance between happiness and self-denial. When we say self-denial, it means kind of self-discipline, like accepting that you can't have everything, and that you should be grateful for what you have. And that really plays into a lot of modern day ideas about happiness and mindfulness, right? Like accepting what you have and um, you know being grateful for it. Um, so the Buddha and Buddhism also believes in reincarnation, and the idea is that, again, based on how you live your life, you'll be treated differently in the next life. So if you live a good life, you meditate, you try to practice the middle path or the middle way, then you'll be treated well in your next life. If you're selfish and greedy, then you won't be treated so well. And it kind of works like almost like this ladder, because ultimately what you're trying to reach is this thing called nirvana. Um, and nirvana, in addition to being a band from the 90s that you may or may not have heard of, with one Kurt Cobain, nirvana is this the book calls it a state of bliss, but it's kind of it's the end of suffering, and it's sort of the perfect uh, state, um, just perfect contentedness. You don't want for anything. Um, you're just in this permanent state of sort of, I guess you could call it relaxation or enlightenment or knowledge. Um, and so, just a definition, the these teachings are known as the Dharma, or the divine law, and what's different between Buddhism and Hindu society is that in Buddhism anybody could reach nirvana, no matter where you are born in society, no matter what your job is, how much money you have, who your parents are, you can reach nirvana. Um, and eventually he spreads this all throughout Asia, uh, and um, again, it's still a very common religion to this day. Okay. So I believe, yeah, that's it for this reading. It's a little shorter this time. Um, so uh, again, if you need to rewatch any sections, you may. Um, and let me know if you have questions.